This is Ultimate Boulder 2.0. In the last couple days, I optimized the build and doubled the damage. We're now hitting billions of damage. If you played my Boulder Bear last season, you'll recognize this right away. We're using a lot of the same synergies that we used last season for this season, but with the addition of new items, we're able to pop off even more. Now, you're not always going to see $1 billion plus damage every time you hit, but as you'll see in the gameplay in this video, we consistently hit overpowers, and the damage from the overpowers go anywhere from a few 100 million all the way up to over $1 billion. And this isn't just a single hit like Pulverize. When we overpower, the boulders continue to spin around us for several seconds, and we're able to hit several billion DPS. And because we worked an extra overpower into our kit, we're now able to overpower on bosses to get that DPS there as well. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I put out a lot of different guides, and if you comment and let me know what you're interested in, I can make some for you as well. Now, I covered all these details in my previous video, but in case you missed it, let me cover the very basics of the build. We're using Dolmen Stone, which is unique that allows our boulders to spin around us after being cast, as long as we have Hurricane up, and we're getting enough nature magic cooldown reduction from the amulet in order to maintain Hurricane permanently. We're also maintaining Cataclysm permanently, and the Mjolnir ring is giving us 100% damage and unlimited spirit as long as the ultimate's up. The ultimate's also applying vulnerable to enemies, so it's really useful. The final piece of the puzzle is the metamorphic stone aspect, and this is going to turn our boulder into a core skill. It also adds a spirit cost and removes the cooldown, but because of the Mjolnir ring, we no longer have to worry about spirit. Boulder is our main source of damage. In fact, it's our only source of damage. Poison Creeper is poisoning enemies to give us even more damage. The ultimate we already talked about. Same thing with Hurricane. But additionally, Hurricane also reduces enemy damage by 20%. We're using Bulwark as a form of Unstoppable, which will give us extra damage from Tybalt's Will, and extra damage reduction from Tybalt's Will. Not to mention a Barrier and Unstoppable. Finally, we're using Blood Howl or Shred. Blood Howl is going to be the defensive option, and it also gives us attack speed. It'll activate our Vigilance passive and heal us. Alternatively, Shred will give us the ability to shapeshift if we want to activate some bonuses like Quick Shift, at least more consistently. It also gives us the ability to dash between enemies, but it does make it more chaotic and harder to control how you push enemies around with the boulders. So I highly recommend trying to learn how to play the build without Shred, because I think you end up getting better DPS overall. For a gear, we're going to be using Vasili's Prayer, and this is going to turn our Earth skills into Werebear skills. This means that our boulder can now get benefits from things like Insatiable Fury, as well as some Paragon passives and a lot of other stuff. Vasili's Prayer has amazing affixes, so you're getting Willpower, which increases both our damage and our overpower damage, Max Life, which plays into overpower, Armor, which we're going to need in order to hit our cap, and Ranks to Defensive Posture, which is extremely good as a defensive ability. This increases our damage reduction by a ton. Not that it really matters, but we also gain Fortify. For a chest piece, we're running Insatiable Fury, and yes, this item is insane. This is a perfect item, and I managed to buy this from somebody for 1 billion gold. I also triple critted into Ursign's strength bonus, so now instead of 30% damage and 30% overpower damage and 20% health, I'm getting 30% health, 40% damage, and 40% overpower. It's actually 40.8, but close enough. For the gloves, we're going for core skills, and this is going to give us extra damage on our boulder. We also want critical strike chance and preferably willpower, but maximum life and critical strike damage are okay here as well. You could do overpower damage as well, but I don't like building into overpower damage because the large majority of our hits are not overpower, but it is nice to see those juicy overpower hits. For Tybalt's Will, we're going for a high multiplier on damage at the bottom, and 20% is the highest you can get. We also want to have a good damage reduction stat, so preferably you want to get a GA on this. All stats and maximum life are pretty good as well, but maximum resource is pointless, so don't worry about that. For a boost, you have two choices. If you're running Shred, you can go for Wild Heart Hunger, which on paper will give you a higher amount of damage, but it requires building up stacks, which take a lot of time. Not to mention, if you stop shapeshifting for 5 seconds, you lose all of the bonuses and you have to start over. So I personally would recommend these boots. You're going to want Ranks to Boulder, Willpower, and either Max Life or Movement Speed. You probably don't need the movement speed though, because we get so much from our Dolmen Stone and our Mjolnir ring. As for the implicit, I highly recommend having attacks reduce evade cooldown, but I couldn't pass up a triple GA item, so I have the worst one on here. For your weapon, I recommend going with overpower damage, which is on a two-handed mace as the implicit, and then you're going to want willpower, maximum life, and critical strike damage. You could pretty easily find a weapon on the market like these, and they only go for a couple 100 mil. Now our 3 legendary items can have tempers on them, and I recommend having crowd control damage on your two-hander, This is going to help you hit your Earth and Devastation bonus, as well as chance for Boulder projectiles to cast twice. But because we're limited to 10 max boulders on our Dolmen Stone, you don't actually need to get a lot of bonuses into the chance for Boulder projectiles to cast twice, because you're going to hit your cap anyways. So focus on trying to get the willpower to up your damage. On the boots, you can temper movement speed or evade cooldown reduction. Again, you might cap on the movement speed without any here, so don't worry about it too much. The other temper doesn't really matter. And on the gloves, you can go for critical strike chance with earth skills, or boulder damage. And again, the utility temper doesn't really matter. For amulet, of course, we're doing Dolmen Stone, and here you want a GA affix for your nature magic cooldown reduction, and you want to get at least 2 bonuses into this, but 3 is even better. Now the reason you'd want to go 3 here instead of an extra one going into wrath skills is because if you get your cooldown low enough, you won't need as many ranks into Endless Tempest, and you'll be able to pull points in your skill tree out of that and put it into something for damage or damage reduction. For rings, we're going with Ring of Starless Skies, which is an uber unique, and if you don't have this, you can go for a legendary ring with Changeling stat on it. Don't forget that on a legendary ring, you can temper Cataclysm cooldown reduction, which might help you reach that breakpoint easier. For the bonuses, I want to put it into core skills here, because I cap on critical strike chance anyways, and attack speed doesn't benefit us as much as it would because we cap on the number of boulders we can have. And for our other ring, of course, we have to use Mjolnir Ring. We're getting that double damage from the passive, and I prefer my Masterworks going into Endless Tempest so I can remove those skill tree points. For Spirit Boons, we're going with Wariness, Iron Feather, Avian Wrath, Calamity, and Obsidian Slam. If you're not getting your ult off cooldown in time, I don't recommend using Calm Before the Storm because our lucky hit chance is super low and we really benefit from Obsidian Slam. So instead, if anything, you can always put Flicker Step on instead of your boots. You'll lose a little bit of damage, but it's a much more reliable way to get your ult off cooldown. For a skill tree, you're just going to put 2 points into any basic because we're not actually using it. We're going to max out Wild Impulses for damage, and the spirit cost increase doesn't matter because of Mjolnir. You now have a choice between running Blood Howl with the attack speed or Shred with the dashes. We're going to put a point into Earthen Bulwark and 1 into the Unstoppable for Earthen Bulwark. We're going to max out Vigilance, and keep in mind that you can keep this up all the time as long as your cooldown for Earthen Bulwark is under 6 seconds, even without using Blood Howl. We're putting 1 point into Poison Creeper, and this is going to poison bosses reliably, and that prevents us from having to do it manually with something like Shred. We can also use the active on this in order to poison a bigger group of enemies. We're going to grab Hurricane and get Savage Hurricane, max out Boulder, and go to Natural Boulder. This helps us cap our critical strike chance, and as you can see, I have 33 ranks of Boulder right now. In my previous video, I only had 21. We're going to max out Stone Guard, and we actually don't need this point in Safeguard because of Facilities, so I'm going to move this somewhere else. In fact, let's put it right here. So we're going to max out Mending and Provocation. Provocation is our new source of overpower, and this is what allows us to hit 1 billion damage on bosses. You'll definitely see when this pops off on bosses that the bosses just melt. We're going to max out Envenom, and that's just extra damage. We're going to max out Natural Disaster, Defiance, and Circle of Life. You can max out Resonance, or you can drop this somewhere defensive. If you use Shred, you'll probably want to put those points in Quick Shift instead, and you can always put points in Heightened Senses if you're using Shred as well. We're going to max out Defensive Posture, and then finally, we're going to get the Keystone passive, Ursine Strength. And as I said before, look at these numbers. That is crazy. We benefit highly from all of these. For the Paragon boards, we're going to start with Spirit on our starter board. We'll move up, we're going to grab Constricting Tendrils, and here we're putting Outmatch. Moving to the right, we're attaching Ancestral Guidance, and here we're putting Earth and Sky. Moving down from here, we're attaching Earth and Devastation, getting the Legendary Node, and we're putting Fang and Claw here. Moving down again, we're going to attach the Inner Beast, and here we're putting Dominate. This is another big benefit of putting Overpower into the build even more, because we're going to be overpowering bosses more often, and that increases the damage they take by 15%. Moving down from here, we're going to attach the Survival Instincts, and we're going to grab the Legendary, as well as put Tectonic Glyph. Now this is the one optional glyph, because you could replace this with something that has survivability on it instead. Your best choices are probably going to be Territorial or Werebear. To the left from here, we're going to attach the Heightened Malice board, and we're getting the Legendary Node. This is a massive amount of damage increase when we're dealing damage to 3 or more poisoned enemies. Here's what the whole board looks like when you're done. And don't be afraid to play around with these points based on your own needs. For example, you can easily put a couple of points here to get some extra armor. You could move Outmatch down to your starter board in order to get more of your resistances, or you can grab more damage to crowd control enemies if you need it to hit your Earth and Devastation bonus. Don't forget, if you are not able to hit your cooldown reduction that you need, use my previous build because it does comparable damage while still having the ability to have more cooldown reduction on the helmet. But if you really want to maximize Boulder, this is the way to go. But I think this build is in a good place, so let me know what you want to see next. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Daddy Druid out.
Billions of damage.